On April 9, 2016, a call came into the police department in Renton, Washington, USA. A law enforcement officer received a call from a man who reported a horrific discovery while he was taking out his trash. When he was unloading another bin, he found 3 suspicious white garbage bags. The man untied one of them and found bloody human remains inside. The dispatcher sent police officers to the scene, who immediately arrived and examined the bags. The sight was truly horrific. Someone had chopped a person into pieces. The victim's identity was established quite quickly, as investigators were already searching for her. Among the discovered body parts were a leg, arm, and head. Detectives immediately began working to find the other remains. Ingrid Lyne was a bright, cheerful woman. She was born in August 1975 in Arizona. The young beauty studied in Tucson and graduated from Canyon del Oro High School. Since '93, Ingrid had been trying to make her dream come true. She wanted to become a nurse, so she enrolled in the medical faculty at the University of Arizona. There, she became a Bachelor of Science and received her nursing degree. This happened in '97. After that, the enterprising young woman went to Seattle, Washington to find work and gain necessary practical experience. This happened in 2000. It was here that her medical career began, which lasted 13 years. She became an employee of the Seattle Medical Center, which had just opened and was actively hiring staff. During this period, she married a man named Philip Lyne, whom she had been dating recently. He was also an employee of the center. They met at work, quickly found common ground, and began building a relationship. 3 daughters were born in the marriage, Riesbrook and Noelle. However, gradually the relationship wore itself out. More and more problems of misunderstanding began. Discord set in, so the woman filed for divorce in 2014. Ingrid felt that she wasn't receiving deserved understanding and support from her spouse, and didn't see the need to preserve the marriage just for the children's sake. The woman believed that it was much more important for children to see happy parents, even if living separately. After this, she changed her residence and settled with her 3 daughters in the neighboring small town of Renton, Washington, which was a half-hour drive from Seattle. However, the woman did not yet suspect what difficulties she would face as a single mother. Nevertheless, she was determined to overcome all the difficulties and hardships of life for the sake of her children's future. She had a good job, beloved children, and lots of enthusiasm. At the time of these events in 2016, Ingrid was 40 years old. At that time, the children were 6, 8, and 10 years old. Accordingly, the daughters maintained contact with both parents and sometimes stayed with their father. However, Ingrid still felt great resentment toward her ex-husband, which periodically provoked small conflicts between them. The woman reproached him that she catastrophically lacked support in marriage, and she dreamed of receiving it, but Philip gave her nothing. Ingrid still hoped to build her personal life. In search of true love, she registered on a dating site. There she met a pleasant man to talk to. During their conversation, feelings flashed between them. The interlocutor gave her a sense of calm, soulfulness, smoothed over the difficult moments of everyday life that she faced. Ingrid already believed that happiness was very close. It seemed that a new chapter was beginning in the life of the whole family. But unfortunately, she did not suspect that this was not a love story, but a real horror film. On April 8, 2016, Ingrid finally decided to meet with her pen pal. They arranged a date. Therefore, the single mother thoroughly prepared for the meeting and even drove her daughters to her ex-husband. Ingrid shared the happy news about her success in personal life with Philip, and he wished her luck. She was planning to pick up the children only the next day, after meeting with her new love interest. The first date was supposed to take place at a Seattle Mariners baseball game, a big event for all fans of the game. After that, the couple planned to go to a bar where allegedly the new boyfriend's sister worked. However, the next day, April 9th, the woman didn't come for the children early in the morning as agreed. Philip couldn't reach her by phone. Then the ex-husband came to Ingrid's house around 10 o'clock in the morning. He was going to return the children to her, but he was immediately concerned by the absence of her silver 2015 Toyota Highlander, which his ex-wife drove. The car always stood in the driveway at the house, but for some reason it wasn't there. Philip knocked on the door, but no one answered. Then the man dialed his ex-wife's number several times, tried to write a couple of messages, but she remained silent. He started looking in the windows, trying to find out what happened, but quickly realized that there was no one in the house. This was all the more strange because his ex-wife was always a very responsible woman. especially when it came to their girls. She couldn't just not return home at the appointed time and not even notify anyone. Philip instinctively began to worry. He thought something troubling had happened. The man called Ingrid's mother, whose name was York Abbas. He thought he could get information about the missing woman's whereabouts from her and make sure she was all right, and also wanted to arrange the transfer of the girls. But when Ingrid's mother heard that her daughter wasn't home, she became even more worried. Ingrid hadn't contacted her since last evening. Everyone knew that she was very responsible about all matters and couldn't just disappear without telling anyone where to find her. No one believed that she could run away with her new love interest and forget about her daughters. Ingrid's mother immediately came to her daughter's house to check on her. York had a spare key, so she used it to enter inside. She called for Ingrid, but no one answered. When she went upstairs to check the bedroom, she found the missing woman's purse and phone there. This was doubly strange. The woman couldn't have left in her car, leaving essential items at home. After this, the missing woman's mother contacted the police. She reported the disappearance of her daughter and her car. She also told investigators that she had no idea where her daughter might be, but she would not under any circumstances abandon her children to the mercy of fate. York emphasized that she was very worried and felt like something bad had happened. Officers from the city police department arrived at the house and met York, who was in tears. She was worried about her daughter and feared that something terrible could have happened to her. The police suggested that Ingrid had just gone somewhere on business and would return soon. But the mother's intuition suggested that they needed to immediately direct all efforts to the search. Law enforcement officers listened to the mother's words and immediately began inspecting the missing woman's house. Several officers went around to neighbors trying to learn any information that would lead them on the trail. One of the interviewed men shared important information. He told an intriguing story. According to him, he saw Ingrid return home in the company of an unfamiliar man the previous evening. The neighbor instinctively felt anxious. The stranger seemed suspicious to him. However, the witness claimed that he hadn't seen anyone leave the house after this visit. But the facts indicated that the house was empty, which means Ingrid and the man did leave the house after all. And at this time, the girls and the mother of many children also began to worry because of her absence. They learned that the police were looking for their mom, but York calmed the children that she would return soon, despite the fact that she herself increasingly believed less in a happy outcome. While Ingrid's mother was waiting for news from the police, she remembered that her daughter had shared her Verizon account with her. It was used as a personal page and for business. The offer provided access to various services and information sources, including household expense management. The woman logged into her daughter's page, hoping that she would be able to find at least some useful information. Unexpectedly, she found a phone number from which dozens of calls had been made to her daughter's number, including on the day she disappeared. The woman continued her investigation and entered the found phone number on social media. This way, she found the profile of a man named John Charlton. York was beside herself with worry and immediately approached the stranger with questions about her daughter. She just wanted to know what happened and when he had last seen her. She said that Ingrid was missing. Her car had disappeared, but documents and personal belongings remained at home, so the woman was worried. Then York said that she had contacted the police, and they were already looking for her daughter. In response, the man told a story that stunned the woman. John told the missing woman's mother that in the evening, they were supposed to go to a club. However, instead of that, after the game and going to the bar, they decided to spend the night together. According to the man, Ingrid was going to pick up the children the next day, so he didn't stay with her until morning. Then they parted ways, and he hadn't seen her since. It turned out that the internet acquaintance could be the last person who saw Ingrid alive. York told him this, and said that the police would likely contact him to find out the circumstances of that evening. He didn't mind, maintained communication with the missing woman's mother, and seemed to sincerely worry about her disappearance. York continued communicating with the man on social media. She thought he was hiding something. The woman tried to find out where her daughter might have gone after meeting with him. Could she have met with someone else after that? However, the man remained silent on most questions, which only increased concern and suspicion. Later, he stopped responding altogether, and even reading her messages. This upset the missing woman's mother to tears. She literally didn't know what to do next. The only person who could help learn her daughter's fate was silent. The situation continued to escalate. 6 hours after Ingrid's disappearance, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the police received a frightening call. The department was contacted by a person named Mike, who found 3 large white garbage bags with human remains. The man's house was located several kilometers from Ingrid's home in Seattle. When Mike told the emergency dispatcher about his terrifying discovery, his voice was literally shaking. He wrote that he saw a severed human head, as well as painted nails. He didn't rummage through the remains because he could barely stand due to shock and approaching nausea. When police arrived at the scene, they immediately noticed that this was the work of skilled hands. The body had been neatly cut into pieces and packed in separate bags. Experienced police officers know this isn't easy to do, unless this wasn't the killer's first crime. There were no signs of decomposition. Even the victim's facial features remained intact, which is characteristic of recent murders. Due to good preservation, police quickly established that the head belonged to Ingrid, who had gone missing just hours ago, and they were actively searching for her at the time. Investigators were surprised to find the remains so close to the victim's residence. Usually experienced killers transport bodies far from the crime scene to make them harder to discover. This could also be a disturbing sign indicating that the perpetrator was mocking the police. In such case, new victims were practically guaranteed, which meant they needed to act as quickly as possible. Perhaps the villain was already eyeing his next innocent victim. Additionally, similar cases in the region and neighboring states were being investigated. It wasn't ruled out that Ingrid was far from the first person the killer had murdered, but nothing similar nearby could be found. All evidence was collected by forensics and sent to laboratories for examination. At this time, investigators informed the missing woman's mother, York, that she would never see her daughter again. This news had a devastating effect. The woman literally exploded with grief and questions. Who could have dealt so cruelly with her daughter? And for what? But the detectives had no answers to these questions. They had yet to discover the remaining body parts and track down the sadist who carried out the brutal murder of an innocent victim. The next day, April 10th, 2016, York logged into her social media page again, hoping to see a response from John to her messages. But there was no answer. She told the man that her daughter had been found dead. However, all her attempts to contact him were ignored. He wasn't reading the messages. After which, the woman went to the police and provided detectives with information about Ingrid's suspicious boyfriend. Law enforcement officers immediately tried to contact the man. However, all attempts were also unsuccessful. Then investigators left a message stating that they needed to talk to him about the crime, and if he didn't respond soon, it could lead to his arrest. On April 11th, 2016, Ingrid's pen pal came to the police himself. The detectives made sure he came without weapons and began questioning. They got an understanding of John's activities, after which they moved on to events related to the recent murder victim. Police tried to understand if the man had a motive for murder, or if he was really just a random person in this investigation. But from the first minutes, detectives had doubts. First of all, this was due to how calm John was. He expressed absolutely no emotions, despite the fact that his new love interest had been killed several days ago. According to him, they attended a Seattle Mariners baseball match, played darts, drank at a bar. Then they took a bus to her house and got off downtown. At home, they played adult games, and then she kicked him out of the house because she didn't want the children to see him in the morning. And when he woke up in the morning, he was lying on the sidewalk near the building. Then the man sent her text messages asking how she was doing, but she didn't answer. John believed they had an intimate connection, but wasn't sure because he lost consciousness. Most of his answers to the officer's questions were evasive. Sometimes he got confused in his own words. Even when the police left the interrogation room, they saw on cameras that John showed absolutely no feelings. He just went to sleep. And then, when they entered the room again, John refused to answer questions altogether and demanded a lawyer. However, it still wasn't possible to connect this suspicious guy with the victim's remains. At that time, forensics were still working on finding evidence. As a result, the victim's boyfriend remained in witness status and was released home. However, investigators closely watched him from this moment to get new clues. Law enforcement officers meanwhile continued examining the deceased's house. Here they found an almost empty box of garbage bags that were identical to the bags containing her body parts. After inspecting the premises completely, officers also found a saw in the bathroom, which had traces of blood, tissue, and bone. Samples were sent for analysis. Laboratory tests confirmed they belonged to the murdered woman. Also, numerous blood traces were found in the bathtub itself, which means the woman was dismembered right here in her own home. The next important step was finding Ingrid's remaining parts. On April 15, 2016, another call came into the police department. A different man contacted the officers. He also made a horrifying discovery in his garbage bin. It was a large white bag with a human torso. One of its distinguishing features was a piercing mark. Investigators suspected it was Ingrid's body. She also had a piercing in that spot. Tests confirmed their suspicions. All new evidence was also collected and sent to the laboratory. On April 18, 2016, a leg was found at a waste processing plant, with nails painted the same way as the missing woman's. All body part discovery locations were relatively close to the victim's home. All this indicated that it wasn't a maniac at work, but probably a well-prepared person. Investigators were sure John was behind this crime, and they were on the right track. But given the lack of any evidence of his involvement in the murder, detectives began investigating other suspects among the deceased's relatives and acquaintances. But none of them fit the role of suspect. It was also decided to conduct another search of Ingrid's house, hoping to get more information. Now, during the inspection, they used luminol, which highlights cleaned bloodstains. This way, they managed to find many traces of washed blood that weren't visible during the first visual inspection. Police even took apart the plumbing pipes and found a lot of blood in the drain. This confirmed that the house was the bloody murder scene of its owner. The found evidence indicated that the crime wasn't a random burst of rage. It was carefully planned, and attempts were made to conceal it. Someone had actively cleaned everything. When expert reports came in, the circumstances of the brutal murder became clear. Signs of strangulation were found on the deceased's neck, which was the cause of death. This was indicated by abrasions around the throat, as well as burst capillaries in Ingrid's eyes. After this, the victim was dragged into her bathtub, where she was dismembered and packed into garbage bags. Toxicology tests showed that the deceased was under the influence of alcohol. The level was slightly above normal. This indicated mild intoxication, but no prohibited substances were found in the blood. On April 20th of the same year, Ingrid's car was found in Belltown, 6 minutes' drive from Seattle. Here were found those same garbage bags in which the victim's remains were discovered. Inside, forensics found 3 fingerprints on the driver's side door handle, which became decisive evidence in the case. They were immediately collected and sent for analysis, where it was confirmed that the owner of the prints was that same John Charlton, who was the last to see the victim alive. All obtained testimony and evidence led to the murdered woman's new boyfriend. His calmness, way of communicating, and statements during interrogation were deceptive tactics usually meant to confuse the investigation. However, they managed to convincingly prove that he had planned the crime even before meeting the victim. He deceptively entered her home, strangled her, then disposed of the remains. He also thoroughly cleaned up evidence of the crime after the brutal murder. But there was nothing substantial against him, so the suspect was called in for questioning. Ideally, detectives wanted to get a confession from him. During interrogation, John again talked about meeting the deceased. They had a good time, had fun, the woman felt great. Then they came to her house by bus, and after that he left when she was still alive. And then he went to his ex-girlfriend. Meanwhile, John couldn't explain how his fingerprints ended up in Ingrid's car if they took the bus to her house. His alibi was also questionable. Police officers made considerable efforts to get his girlfriend's contacts and conduct a confidential conversation with her. The witness's identity wasn't disclosed for safety reasons. According to the girlfriend, John didn't really work anywhere and usually spent nights in a shelter located in Seattle. He would come to her house for a couple of nights each week. At the time of the crimes, they had known each other for about a year. The man kept some personal belongings at his girlfriend's place. He was supposed to come to her on the morning of April 9th, 2016. However, he was very late. Arriving only around 10:30 p.m., the girlfriend noticed his lip was split. But the boyfriend explained that someone tried to rob him at a bar. It turns out John had no alibi and lied about his whereabouts. Police officers who interrogated the man right after Ingrid's disappearance also remembered that he was injured. He had abrasions on his head and chin, scratches on his chest and arms. The nature of the injuries could correspond to defensive actions that couldn't save Ingrid's life, but she fought desperately. Police reviewed the complete biography of Ingrid Lyne's probable killer and took measures to arrest him. According to information received, John Charlton was born in 1979 in Washington. Born into a decent family, he was a normal child, but in adolescence problems with his behavior appeared. He dropped out of school and left his parents' home. John traveled a lot around the country looking for a better life. At 37 years old, he began having problems with the law due to his past. In '97, he was convicted of minor assault, showing his tendency toward aggression. Additionally, his reckless driving and dangerous road maneuvers were repeatedly documented. In Washington in '98 and 2006, he was prosecuted on charges of attempted robbery under aggravating circumstances. In 2008, he was convicted of theft in Montana. A similar case was recorded in Idaho in 2009. Even more useful information was provided by the man's parents. In 2006, his mother and father contacted police trying to protect themselves from their own son's outbursts of anger that manifested when drunk when he came to their home. They even got a restraining order against him, but nothing helped. Over the years, his behavior became increasingly violent and uncontrollable. He was constantly under the influence of alcohol and prohibited substances, so he could explode at any moment. One of his ex-girlfriends said that John would strongly choke her during intimacy. Until she stopped breathing, he simply couldn't stop. Another ex-girlfriend said that John confessed to her that he had killed some girl several years ago in Florida. All friends described him as cruel, aggressive, who was into alcohol and prohibited substances, and under their influence could do anything. Therefore, they weren't surprised when John was accused of murder. Based on all these circumstances, 37-year-old John Charlton was arrested and charged with murdering the woman. Despite initially denying involvement in the crime, in court on his lawyer's advice, John did confess. He said that he deliberately strangled Ingrid and then brought the body to the bathtub, where he dismembered it with a saw. Having packed the remains in garbage bags, he took the victim's car through downtown Seattle, where he disposed of them in several different bins. These words were confirmed by forensic experts. The defendant still couldn't explain the motive for the crime. It was simply unmotivated aggression from a person who had posed a threat to society for many years. And ultimately, the evil resulted in a monstrous crime. John was found guilty of first-degree murder. His prison sentence was 27 years and 9 months. This sentence outraged many, since John could be released when he turned 65. Before sentencing, the killer addressed the court and the grieving family of the victim and expressed sincere remorse. He asked for their forgiveness for the pain he made them endure. The murdered woman's mother was outraged by the sentence because the criminal didn't just kill her daughter, but also raped her, dismembered her, and threw her in different garbage bins, as if she were nobody. Philip, the torn woman's former spouse, reminded that they all lost not just a good person, but also a mother of 3 children who would be impossible to replace. The claim by John's ex-girlfriend that he had previously committed murder in Florida could not be confirmed. There were several similar murder cases in that state, but no evidence at the scene that could point to John was found. Although police believe the probability that he had killed before is quite high, a GoFundMe page was opened to raise funds for Ingrid's 3 daughters. These collections amounted to more than $270,000. Many teenagers choose their idols from among the famous and popular. On one hand, this isn't so bad if focusing on positive personality qualities, be it purposefulness or charismatic character. But what if from a young age a person is interested in serial killers, admires maniacs, and praises bloody crimes? What if this teenager wants to become one of them? Sarah was born in 2002 in Switzerland. After some time, she moved to Bavaria, Germany. According to the country's legislation, very strict confidentiality laws apply here, including regarding criminals. Therefore, the girl's exact name is unknown. In the media, she is called Sarah M. The girl's childhood took place in quite ordinary conditions. She had caring and loving parents who maintained mutual understanding with her. She studied well in school, was a diligent girl, and made many friends. The girl loved animals. She even had her own little pet rabbit. Nothing unusual in her fate at that time could be found. Nothing that could awaken bloodlust in a bright person. In adolescence, Sarah, like most young people, became rebellious. She started skipping school, developed interests that her parents didn't share. Many friends and acquaintances noted that she became hostile and aggressive. Because of this, conflicts occurred in the group, and increasingly Sarah was the one provoking them. Sometimes she behaved arrogantly, but in frank conversations complained that she felt unwanted and lonely. She couldn't find a way out of the situation, so she increasingly withdrew into herself and became more cruel towards others. During this period, she began showing sadistic behavior. If she didn't like someone, the schoolgirl could harass and bully them, clearly getting pleasure from it. Sarah stopped following the school dress code. Instead, she constantly wore ripped jeans and used very aggressive makeup. She looked like a typical heavy metal fan. Once conservative acquaintances suspected the girl of Satan worship because of her appearance. When other classmates asked her why she dressed this way, the rebel answered that she could afford it since she earned a lot of money selling her body. Of course, this was a lie. She just really loved attracting attention to herself, and did it quite radically, shocking everyone. For this, she was ready to show rudeness and even be the first to attack someone, including using physical force. This looked like a typical difficult teenage period, which manifests differently in everyone. However, the situation significantly worsened and began getting out of control when the heroine turned 16. During this period, she began experimenting with prohibited substances. The girl started using light prohibited drugs, and later moved on to heavy ones. Eventually, she developed a serious dependence on ecstasy. This vicious addiction attracted the attention of authorities. The schoolgirl was detained and charged with using prohibited substances. The girl behaved extremely aggressively. She insulted officers, attacked law enforcement, and tried to harm them physically. After this event, the situation only worsened. Sarah began inflicting injuries on herself. She didn't hide at all what she was doing from family and friends. All her arms were covered in cuts, and her mother and father were very worried about what was happening. One day when they entered her room, they saw a rope hanging from the ceiling. This became the last straw, after which the girl was placed in a psychiatric hospital. Here she underwent examination and was detained for long-term treatment. Doctors identified borderline personality disorder in her, as well as hallucinations from using psychoactive substances. Doctors also recorded several milder emotional disorders. Specialists immediately began treatment, but the girl's stay in the hospital didn't go as smoothly as desired. After some time, it was established that she tried to convince another patient to take his own life. He managed to control himself, but the situation greatly concerned the clinic's doctors. As a result, her treatment was extended. It is believed this was because psychiatrists saw a deteriorating condition and understood that releasing such a patient was dangerous. The girl spent several months in the specialized institution due to identified destructive behavioral tendencies. In the following few years, Sarah regularly ended up in psychiatric hospitals. This continued until age 17, but nothing helped. The girl developed a dark and perverted obsession with serial killers. She devoted all her free time to watching series and crime chronicles about the most shocking cases of ultraviolence. Her favorite serial killers were Ted Bundy and Richard Ramirez. She was literally obsessed, especially with the latter. Portraits of Richard Ramirez were hung all over the bedroom. His face was on her mobile phone wallpaper. Ted Bundy's photo became the computer wallpaper. On her social media pages, Sarah regularly made posts about serial killers, emphasizing what passionate feelings they aroused in her. Here, she also shared her thoughts about maniacs' lives. For example, the girl was sure that Jack the Ripper was a woman. That's why this character became one of the key ones for her. She wanted to kill. Like her idol Richard Ramirez, she drew a pentagram on her palm. Germany has very strict laws regarding symbolism. Such an act could land the girl in prison for 3 years, but she was never caught with this symbol on her palm. Her behavior was becoming more frightening and worried relatives and acquaintances. The obsession gradually developed until the story's heroine asked herself questions. His name was Leon, but exact details and age couldn't be determined, again due to very strict confidentiality legislation in Germany. Like his girlfriend, the boyfriend struggled with mental disorders. He already had a criminal record, and the young man also suffered from psychoactive substance addiction. Sarah seemed to fall in love with the young criminal who seemed like a suitable guy to her. He became her first man. The teenagers spent all their free time together. During this period, the girl became literally obsessed with sex. However, at first, this quite suited both young people. They seemed like quite a harmonious couple. Later, Leon learned about the obsession with serial killers, but didn't give it much importance. He also accepted another dangerous trait of his beloved. Sarah could explode literally out of nowhere and barely controlled her aggression. The girl tried with all her might to make sexual relations with her boyfriend more extreme. She asked him to beat and choke her. The level of violence in their relationship gradually increased. Each time she wanted more cruelty and violence. She began filming sexual acts with her boyfriend. Their relationship lasted about a year and a half. Gradually, Leon felt increasingly uncomfortable with such a crazy girl. Eventually, he broke up with his girlfriend, which was a real blow for Sarah. She sincerely believed she would always be with her boyfriend. He broke her heart. However, the girl's cruel nature wouldn't let her just let her ex-boyfriend go. She craved revenge. Therefore, Sarah began spreading rumors among friends and acquaintances. She accused boyfriends of cruelty and even rape. She complained that Leon posted her intimate photos online. This attracted more and more attention, which the story's heroine loved so much. But in reality, no one believed the girl. Everyone knew that this was another way she tried to attract attention to herself. This angered her even more. It was after this that the rebel decided her ex-boyfriend had to be killed. However, she didn't just want revenge. She wanted to execute hundreds of people. The schoolgirl literally came to hate men, so decided to lure them into a trap and kill them. The girl targeted those who were at least remotely similar to Leon. In April 2021, Sarah's anger reached its peak. Just a month had passed after breaking up with her boyfriend when she went to a hardware store with her friend Francisca. Here, she purchased a huge 30-centimeter knife. But at this point, she wasn't old enough to make this purchase independently and without suspicion. It was at this stage that she needed an older friend who had already reached adulthood. With her help, she managed to acquire the cold weapon. Sarah believed the knife would be her favorite weapon for executing men. After the girl acquired the murder weapon, she conducted an entire online investigation. For several days, she asked the search engine dozens of dark questions. She was interested in how quickly a person would die from a knife wound to the neck, lung, heart, and other body parts. She also viewed information about her favorite serial killers, trying to learn in the smallest details the circumstances of each of their victims' deaths. The girl tried to understand not only how to kill a person most effectively, but also how to remain out of police reach. Of course, asking such questions through a search engine that can easily be tracked is stupid. However, this didn't bother Sarah. The young criminal also wanted to know who was the most effective maniac by number of victims. It was at this moment she learned about the famous killer doctor named Harold Shipman, who is better known as Dr. Death. 28 crimes were officially proven, but according to other sources, he could have had up to 250 murders. Thanks to this enormous number of victims, he automatically became the girl's favorite maniac. Besides openly using the browser, Sarah made at least 2 more mistakes. She decided to be a serial killer who would beat Dr. Shipman's record. She immediately told her friend about this on social media. Later, she also told her friend, the same one who helped acquire the knife. Of course, she wouldn't have done this if she was thinking about maintaining confidentiality. She wanted precisely fame. At this stage, it was necessary to figure out how she would lure her victims. Then the girl went to a dating site where she became Domina Cherry. The name Domina was chosen deliberately. It means domination. In her opinion, the internet was the perfect place where you could easily make acquaintances and remain anonymous. She planned to use her account this way to lure men and kill them. Sarah planned to take as many lives as possible before she was caught. Profiles on 2 dating sites were created and prepared on April 28, 2021. Here, the young criminal described herself as a sexy white girl, a 19-year-old virgin who preferred kissing and BDSM. To spark interest from potential victims, she uploaded her intimate photos to the page. After creating the profile, she quickly gained dozens of admirers. Of course, her attractive profile with a beautiful 19-year-old virgin and such revealing photos couldn't go unnoticed. She didn't rush, so she decided to figure out the selection of the most suitable male victims. That's why in the next 3 days, Domina Cherry began communicating with a large number of unknown men to understand which of them was a suitable victim to become number 1 on her serial killing list. All dialogues were typical. The girl claimed she had quite extensive experience communicating with men, but at the same time said she was a virgin. One of the first people Domina began communicating with was a person named Sam. She made sure he was of legal age, after which she arranged to meet with him on May 3, 2021. By May 4th, she quickly arranged with another man who was called Met online. He introduced himself as a teacher and said he was very interested in non-standard sexual practices. He was fascinated by Sarah's interests and her photos, so he suggested meeting her and having intimacy in the car. But the girl convinced him to go to a country house, and he agreed. Another person named Anthony arranged to meet with Cherry on May 5th. He was one of those who offered to play the role of sexual slave for the girl. He even wanted to give a gift, his car. It's worth noting that similar promises were made by many of the men Sarah communicated with over 3 days. In total, there were 224 potential victims with whom she corresponded. She planned to kill at least one person every day. But Sarah again made a reckless move, confessing her plans to her friend. In this correspondence, she reported that she planned to dispose of each new victim by immobilizing them and then slitting their throat. However, even at this stage, her friend didn't take what Sarah was saying seriously. The girl knew her craving for attention. Naturally, such people, pathological liars, are not always easy to take seriously, especially when they claim they're going to engage in such extravagant things as serial killings. During personal correspondence with the girl, another man named Zaid appeared. All that's known about him is that he was an immigrant from Iran who was 39 years old at the time of meeting Mina. He moved to Germany in 2014 and had lived in the country for about 7 years. The man was the oldest on her list. He told his new friend that he was a member of a large family and had 6 brothers. Here he got a job as a private security guard and spent all his free time playing football, which he simply adored. In spring 2021, he was browsing dating sites where he came across Sarah's stunning photo and met Domina Cherry. He always wanted to start a family and was intrigued by the young beauty's offer. The acquaintance with this person happened on May 1st. He wrote to the girl at 10:53 in the morning. They quickly began a conversation. Zaid said he had a car. It's worth noting that among hundreds of men the girl communicated with, not all were scoundrels who just wanted to have sex with a 19-year-old virgin. The Iranian immigrant seemed to really be in love with her and wanted to build a serious relationship with her. He just decided to experiment in his search for a partner. However, at that moment he didn't even suspect that mortal danger loomed over him. When Sarah learned he had his own car, she suggested meeting that same night. Around 20 hours, Zaid was supposed to pick her up from the nearest bus stop. After this, they were supposed to go to Sarah's cabin located in the forest outside the city. The aspiring serial killer planned to spend the rest of the day clarifying the details of the upcoming deed. During this period, new sinister queries appeared in her browser. She wanted to know how long it takes for a person to bleed out and from which wounds. She also asked how to most effectively dispose of a body. During this period, an unexpected guest appeared at her house. Her ex-boyfriend Leon came to collect his things. At some point, Sarah wanted to kill him right there, due to anger suddenly overwhelming her. But he expected such plot twists, so he came to her house with his friend. The friend stayed outside, but was warned that if he didn't come out after 10 minutes, it meant his ex had attacked him. Sarah saw this person in the inner courtyard and abandoned the idea of killing Leon. Around 1937, Domina was ready to meet her first victim. At this moment, she wrote to 2 of her friends, including the girl who helped acquire the knife, where and how she planned to dispose of the person. She asked them to wish her luck. After this, her pen pal became seriously worried. She understood that Sarah's intentions were very serious. If she knows about the crime and doesn't report it to police, she would automatically be considered an accomplice. Later, police proved that she asked such questions in the search engine. It's difficult to say exactly how German legislation viewed such acts, but she didn't find a specific answer to this question. In any case, the friend didn't go to the police. Around 20 hours, as arranged, Zaid drove his car to the stop. The charming Domina immediately got into his car. She immediately put him at ease in conversation. They began flirting. The girl tried to do everything to create comfort and lull the victim's vigilance. She said it was about a half-hour drive to her forest cabin, after which she directed him toward the cabin. Zaid didn't suspect that this was actually made up. She had no country cabins or houses. The criminal's goal was only to lure the victim as far as possible from the city to a secluded place to avoid attracting attention. After about half an hour of driving, they turned onto a dirt road. After driving a bit into the forest depths, they stopped. Sarah distracted Zaid with her mobile phone, after which she stabbed him in the neck with the 30-centimeter knife. At this moment, her plans began to crumble, as the man didn't die instantly as she had counted on. Instead, the Iranian began fighting with her, so the girl panicked and ran away, hoping he would just bleed out and die. However, he managed to reach the highway they had turned off from. He went out onto the road and began stopping cars. Fortunately, a nurse was sitting in the nearest car that stopped. This was a real miracle. The man was delivered to the hospital in critical condition. Unfortunately, he fell into a coma, and doctors continued fighting for his life. During this period, the aspiring serial killer was wandering around the city. She returned on foot, but was without shoes. Her tights were completely torn. Sarah was walking around covered in blood. She wandered in this state, ignoring those around and muttering something under her breath. One of the witnesses who met the girl reported to police. This happened just 37 minutes after she tried to kill her first victim. When police, arriving on a tip, detained Domina, who was covered in blood in the neighboring town of Ebermannstadt, they tried to find out what happened to the girl. Law enforcement even suggested she might have killed someone in self-defense. But Sarah directly answered that nothing like that happened. No one attacked her, and she simply wanted to take someone's life. The police were shocked and arrested her. During this period, doctors desperately fought for Zaid's life, but he remained in a coma even 2 weeks after the attack. His family flew in because of the wound. Parents and brothers constantly stayed nearby in the medical facility and simply prayed that he would wake up, talk to them. Unfortunately, after 19 days in a coma, the man died. Sarah's connection to this crime had already been established, so after the person's death, her charges were reclassified from attempted to premeditated murder. Meanwhile, Domina showed absolutely no remorse for her victim. She was only upset because she was caught by law enforcement officers and couldn't implement her plan to kill multiple victims. While in prison, the girl used civilian clothes. She wanted to wear an orange jumpsuit like her idols, but those used in Germany didn't match the color. The suspect also asked to put posters of serial killers in her cell but was refused. Sarah continued behaving like a madwoman. Once during her mother's visit, she asked her to finish what she started and kill Leon for her. When court proceedings began in 2022, the girl showed not the slightest remorse. She openly admitted that she wanted to become a serial killer, which she was pushed to by ex-boyfriend Leon, who dumped her, and therefore she wanted to take revenge on as many men as possible, killing them every day. Sarah was upset that her plan failed so quickly. Later, something unexpected happened for the criminal. The guy she blamed for everything, including rape, Leon, appeared to testify. At this time, she became enraged, literally trying to break free from her restraints to tear him to pieces right in the courtroom. But she was held back. The prosecutor claimed this girl posed a serious threat to society. She completely openly declared her desire to bring death to the innocent, which she had already proven by killing the Iranian immigrant. Due to Sarah's age, which was barely 18 at the time of trial, the court considered it a mitigating circumstance. She was found guilty of murder and sentenced to only 12 years in prison. After which, she drew a pentagram on her hand, right in the courtroom, and showed it to everyone present. This way, she copied the most famous photograph of Richard Ramirez, who remained her idol. The judge hearing this case commented on it like this: "Very rarely does a criminal kill someone out of bloodlust, and this is exactly such a case." The next person in court for this case was friend Francisca, the same girl who refused to report to police after learning about Sarah's plans. After all, if she had warned police about Domina's plans, the murder could have been prevented. By law, she could have received up to 5 years. But for some reason, all charges against her were dropped, and she bore no responsibility for this. The main heroine of this story went to serve her sentence not in prison, but in a psychiatric hospital. The essence of this principle is that she will remain there until she completes treatment. Thus, she can stay under observation much longer than initially ordered by the court, but only if treatment doesn't help or she can't deceive the psychiatrists. In November 2021, a student from Canada flew to Great Britain to meet the love of her life. However, what looked like true love on the internet turned out to be the worst nightmare with a fatal ending. Ashley Wadsworth was born July 25, 2002 in the small town of Vernon, Canada, in an ordinary family. Her mother was named Christy Gendron and father Ken Wadsworth. However, her parents separated when the girl was still a child. She stayed with her father, who literally put his soul into her. Nevertheless, both parents took active part in her life. They were loving and never refused support. The girl grew up purposeful, devoted all her free time to studying. She was very disciplined, handled planning daily tasks well. In all this, she saw an opportunity to achieve more in the future. Despite total enthusiasm for education, she also did sports, downhill skiing. Together, this allowed the girl to grow up sweet, sociable, and successful. Ashley had outstanding abilities for her age. She spoke 3 languages fluently. English, French, and Spanish had an open social position. Wadsworth planned to continue her education to build a career as a lawyer. And these weren't just words, as at 18 she was actually accepted to Thompson Rivers University in Kamloops. Additionally, she was quite religious, so by her coming of age, she was accepted into the Mormon Church. When Canadian Ashley Wadsworth was 11, she began communicating online with a guy named Jack Seppel. He was 4 years older, but despite this, the teenagers quickly found common ground. The guy lived in Great Britain, 6,000 kilometers from his friend. However, social networks reduce any distances, so they could easily message through them. Jack was very kind and caring. The teenagers even synchronized time zones to constantly stay in touch with each other, despite the 4-hour time difference. At first, they communicated as friends, but over time began showing attraction to each other. Young Ashley was delighted with her new boyfriend. They regularly video called, exchanged photos and videos. This allowed the girl to feel special. In her opinion, finding an older boyfriend at such an age was cause for pride. Jack demonstrated his attachment and feelings for Ashley in every way. Gave many gifts to his girlfriend, sending them by mail, and was a good guy. Ashley received constant invitations to come visit him. He even promised to marry Wadsworth. That's how far their feelings went. Jack described beautiful dreams about their wonderful future together in detail, and Ashley fell for it. Her internet boyfriend didn't have such outstanding intellectual abilities, unlike Ashley. He didn't study or work anywhere, and didn't strive for a better life. Despite Ashley not knowing this, there was every reason to believe he was simultaneously communicating with several girls, choosing a partner. In essence, he was unfaithful to her. But Ashley was completely absorbed in this virtual relationship and head over heels in love with him. She was determined to meet Jack soon and build a full relationship with him in real life. But due to age, the girl couldn't do this. Her parents forbade her from meeting the guy in real life until she reached 19 years old. So, their virtual relationship continued for about 8 years, after which 19-year-old Ashley, by agreement with her parents, decided to go to Great Britain. To make this happen, she had to take an academic leave from university for a whole year, and she also saved money for a long time for her dream trip. The girl was planning to travel to Great Britain on a 6-month tourist visa and assumed possible extension. This trip was also seen as an opportunity to travel and learn about another country's culture. However, immediately setting off on such a long journey was real recklessness, so the girl first made several shorter trips with her family. She wanted to gain experience in traveling. In particular, she visited Mexico and California. Her parents weren't thrilled about her intentions. They thought that growing up, the girl would abandon this idea herself. But Ashley didn't back down and was determined to go to her beloved, whom she had known for 8 years and considered practically family. Parents didn't like that their daughter would be so far away on another continent with a stranger, and this worried them greatly. But Ashley couldn't be talked out of it or stopped. In fact, due to her age, they could no longer forbid or prevent anything, so father and relatives just hoped everything would work out as their daughter planned. Dad saw his daughter off to the plane, not suspecting that he would never be able to see her in person again. The girl went to meet her fate, not suspecting that her 23-year-old chosen one had a dark past. At that time, the guy already had 8 convictions for 12 different crimes, all related to domestic violence. Moreover, his former partners seriously feared for their lives, so each contacted police. Breaking up with Jack, they received restraining orders. The girls complained about violence and used no-contact orders to protect themselves. Even the guy's own mother needed similar protection. He attacked her in 2014 when the woman was 55 years old. Her name was Tracy Dalton. During the attack in her own home, he seriously damaged the car, windows, and doors of the residence. For this crime, he received a suspended sentence and a ban on approaching his mother. Jack had no right to approach her or her property for 5 years. However, in 2018, he violated the court order, so was sent to a juvenile offender facility where he spent 8 weeks. After this, the threat of getting a 5-year sentence hung over him if he violated the established boundaries. Notably, Jack never entered conflicts with men. His victims were always female representatives, and this was easily explainable. Women were weaker and couldn't fight back. Unfortunately, Ashley had not the slightest idea about his dark past, so she came to the small town of Chelmsford in Great Britain on November 12, 2021, straight to a dangerous criminal who was a wolf in sheep's clothing. After 8 years of online communication, she had complete trust in her partner, so immediately went to live in his one-room apartment. She didn't even consider the option of staying in a hotel or rental apartment. The girl was so blinded by love and trusted him. At first, everything was great. The couple traveled to interesting tourist spots, to local attractions. They took many photos and posted their happy photos on their social media pages. The lovers got a kitten which they named Winston and began caring for it. It seemed that Ashley was happy. When the girl video called with her relatives, she said that Jack was very kind, sweet, attentive, and caring. The guy tried his best to make such an impression on her. However, Jack was unemployed, didn't strive for anything, he never had money. In this, he clearly didn't match those images that were in young Ashley's head. She quickly enough realized that the guy wasn't who he claimed to be, and completely wasn't right for her. At the same time, the girl found herself in an unenviable position, as she had no ability to quickly leave him and move out. It's enough to remember that she was in his apartment, under his round-the-clock supervision, and she didn't even have the opportunity to simply run away from him. Pretty quickly, the seemingly ideal relationship began declining. Jack became irritated because of this, and behaved inadequately and aggressively. On the nearest Christmas, his mental health problems worsened due to drug overdose. The girl called an ambulance and he was taken to a psychiatric hospital. He was diagnosed with narcissistic and paranoid personality disorder. Returning from the clinic, using this fact, he began manipulating his girlfriend. The guy played on Ashley's pity. They had arguments more often. Ashley even sent recordings of their arguments to her friends. Some of the guy's actions sounded truly frightening. The friends advised her to quickly break up with such an unstable person. It was difficult for her to connect with relatives and friends as he changed access passwords to social media and messengers. The guy constantly controlled her correspondence and calls. Later, the girl told relatives that he once hit her on the head, but Ashley forgave everything partly because she was under total control of a tyrant with mental problems. But the situation only got worse. Understanding these relationships were fundamentally flawed, she periodically saved materials on her phone as evidence of their conflicts. Besides audio recordings of scandals, she repeatedly took photos of her beatings, numerous bruises that Jack left on her body. When the girl was practically ready to leave, Jack staged a suicide attempt. Given the high level of control he had over her, he managed to keep her with him again this way. Their relationship was spiraling downward, and this couldn't end well. On February 1st, 2022, one of Jack Seppel's neighbors heard the girl's screams through the wall. Going into the corridor, he saw Ashley standing outside the door. She was crying and said her boyfriend was abusing the kitten, throwing it against the wall. She was in shock as she had never seen such cruelty in her life. After this, according to her, he attacked the girl and also broke her phone. The cause of this outburst of rage was a completely insignificant event. Jack caught his girlfriend scrolling through her newsfeed on her phone. She accidentally looked at a photo of an unclothed girl. He accused her of being perverted and began taking out his anger on her. He absolutely wouldn't listen to her and seemed to simply go mad with rage, literally out of nowhere. The girl managed to tell her neighbors about this, and she also said she feared for her life due to such sudden outbursts of rage from the guy. However, when they went out to talk to Jack, Ashley asked them not to call police. She didn't want to create trouble for the guy. They agreed and spoke to Jack, and this helped. He did calm down somewhat. The guy said he wouldn't harm anyone. His behavior was a mistake, but this turned out to be another manipulation by him. After these events, the girl told her relatives that she definitely intended to return home. She was tired of such relationships and Jack's sudden outbursts of rage. They were incredibly happy about this news, as they understood their daughter was in a terrible situation. Grandmother immediately booked plane tickets to Canada for February 3rd, 2022. However, the girl didn't live until that day. Around noon the next day, February 2nd, 2022, two of Ashley's new friends from the Mormon Church in Great Britain received messages from the girl saying she had serious problems. She asked them to pick her up and gave the address where she was. She sent this information from a new account, signing her name, since he controlled everything connected to her accounts. However, none of the friends could react quickly as they were at church service. A couple hours later, these friends of Ashley got free and received another message from her main account saying everything was fine with her. And this seemed strange. Despite the message being sent from her own number, It was completely unlike her manner, which caused reasonable suspicion. They knew she was planning to move away from the domestic tyrant and was on edge. For this reason, the girl's friends decided to check if she was really okay. They arrived at the house the friend had indicated. It was Jack's apartment. No one opened the door for them there, but they could hear someone walking inside. After conferring, they decided to call police to have officers check on the girl. The friends called emergency service 999. Law enforcement officers arrived around 1600 hours. They tried to convince the property owner to open the door, but this didn't work. Around 1613, the door was broken down. Officers entered the bedroom and found Jack Seppel, next to whom Ashley lay on the bed. The girl had been stabbed with a knife with such cruelty that dozens of wounds were found on her body. The scene resembled a bloodbath. Police reported that medics were needed, but calling an ambulance brought no results as she showed no signs of life. In the end, she was pronounced dead at 1638. Forensic experts determined that the girl had been strangled, but the cause of death was knife wounds. Specialists counted at least 90 strikes that the guy inflicted. Defensive wounds were also found on the girl's wrists. Obviously, she tried to fight off the attacker and fought for her life. The main strikes were to the chest area. For this reason, Ashley had damage to practically all vital organs, including heart, lungs, liver. This indicated that he specifically intended to kill the girl, inflicting strikes in such places. Numerous bruises were also found on her body, at various stages of healing. This indicated the victim was regularly and methodically beaten. Even before police arrived, Jack Seppel put their joint photo on his social media profile and left a dark caption under it, "Mine forever." This completely fit the killer's profile. Many maniacs and serial killers in one way or another felt or described unity or possession of their victim. Police quickly found the murder weapon, a knife, and sent it for analysis. DNA samples on the blade matched the murdered girl's blood. Jack Seppel's fingerprints were found on the knife handle, which also gave a complete match during testing. There was no one else in the apartment. Together, these facts guaranteed the sadist's guilt. Jack was arrested. Initially, he gave no testimony, but ultimately admitted his guilt on September 7, 2022. This happened after 3 consecutive interrogations, during which the guy showed not a single emotion toward his victim. A psychiatric evaluation was pending, which confirmed certain deviations in the killer, but overall found him sane and able to stand trial. Police thoroughly checked the criminal's mobile phone, where they found recorded video made around 12:45 on the day of the crime. In the frame, Jack stands in a bloodied shirt, with the torn body of Ashley in the background. In the video, he apologizes to the murdered girl's sister, who was named Haley. However, the monster didn't send this video in a message, which clearly saved one more person from a nervous breakdown. On October 10, 2022, the maniac's trial was held. Here, all evidence of his guilt was presented, although no one doubted it. The defendant also gave a confession, but showed no emotions, including no regret or remorse. One of his ex-girlfriends testified at trial and characterized Jack as unpredictable, jealous, and insecure. The prosecution believed that on that day, Ashley, who was already packing her things and preparing to leave, told him about breaking up and put a final end to their unhealthy relationship. And this drove him out of control. In a fit of rage, Jack killed Ashley. The murdered girl's mother and father were devastated by her loss and couldn't look at the defendant. Ashley's grandfather, speaking at trial, blamed himself for being the only one who supported her decision to go to Great Britain, because he considered this country maximally safe. He couldn't imagine how this journey would turn out. The deceased's grandmother also heavily experienced her involvement in the murder. She bought plane tickets for the 3rd, not the 2nd of February, so her granddaughter could calmly fly out of the country. Grandmother blamed herself for this and believed such a delay really could have cost Ashley her life. The murdered girl's older sister regretted that Ashley couldn't be a bridesmaid at her recent wedding. Jack took this possibility from them. But the deceased's family was grateful to the defendant for admitting his guilt and sparing them this difficult trial process. As a result of the trial, 23-year-old Jack Seppel was sentenced to life imprisonment with possibility of parole after 23 years and 6 months served. Share your opinion in the comments. Also, like if you found this story interesting. And don't forget about the bell. Thanks for watching.